Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Night for me and for her father. Her father is also a widower. So Tuesday night is our family meal night, and he and I go to lunch every Friday now.
Oh.
And so, but only one of they have 3 children. They're all married with kids, and so I have 5 great grandkids. So
Wow.
and another on the way, I might add.
That's awesome.
But the oldest granddaughter, her husband, and 3 of the kids live here, and so I see them regularly. But the others live in other places, so I don't see them quite as regularly. So it was.
So what was your business in that you started?
It was oil field chemicals. It was a certain kind of chemical that's used to treat water to prevent scale and rust from forming in it. We were highly specialized in just one area of chemicals, and we did it for 45 years. We were the smallest company that ever made this chemical. We took the monomer, the basic chemical, and polymerized it into the next smallest company, and I mean the biggest amount of workers we ever had was about 5, and we were the only small company that survived a long time in that, because bigger companies, BASF and others, will squeeze you out of that business, and so we sold it a couple of years ago. Actually, we practically gave it to a guy that had worked for us for 25 years, and so my son retired, and we turned the business over to him, and he's running it today and doing well.
That's awesome. So what's the name of the chemical?
The chemical is a polyacrylate. It is sodium polyacrylate. You take a thing called acrylic acid. That'd be like one link in a chain, and chain it. Then we hook that chain together. It's got you by putting we call it chain stopper. It's a reducing agent, if you want to call it what a chemical called. It tells you how long that chain is, and then we add the initiator, and they link up to whatever you've calculated and put the right amount of chain stopper in there, so we could make various lengths of chains, various mold weights, as we would say. But it was all basically around the acrylic acid chemistry. It is very interesting, but most companies that did that were bigger companies. We were we were really the smallest. The big several other small companies started just like we did over the 45 years we were in business or whatever it was, and a couple of them just folded up, and a couple of them sold out. They probably they probably did well at it and got a bigger company to buy.
So when I was growing up in Oklahoma, in between Ponca City and Blackwell, on my grandfather's farm, he had 11 oil wells.
Oh yeah.
He was in the oil business. And I remember that chemical.
Yes.
So I know we used it out in the field. I know for a fact we did.
Everybody did.
Yeah.
This was a general term for the chemicals were scale inhibitors, and they were other kinds that were available, but those based on the acrylic acid were probably the best ones, and in the long run they were probably the cheaper ones. There were other molecules would do it, but that one was widely used, and it still is. It's also used in things like paint thinners and concrete thinners and dishwashing and sort of things like that. As a rinse aid, but we were in that business a long time. I like working for myself, but the only problem with that, you're wearing all the hats. Something breaks, you have to fix it.
That's it.
But anyway,
a lot of responsibility.
it is certainly that. So, but I'm so glad that my family lives close and we can see each other several times a week. Now, I guess
So
that. Go ahead.
can we talk about this for a second? So
We can
you
talk about anything you want to.
okay, so you get into business for yourself. How did
Yes,
that happen? How did you end up getting into business for yourself?
that is an excellent question, and I will tell you why. And because I was treated well in the industry,
Yeah.
several times in my early years when I was working for the first company, uh, I invented something, and I was young and naive, and I went to the patent attorney and all the people. And I said, "We need to patent this." And he looked at it and says, "No, we're not going to patent that." We got no way to police this, and it would just tell our competitors what we're doing. So so I may have got a $25 raise the next time I was due a raise, but I got very little recognition. I certainly didn't get a patent. That happened a couple of times, and then I did get some patents that were. I have 2 patents is all, but don't have lots of them. But I discovered some things that I thought that made a lot of money for the company and very little for me.
Right.
And so I said, and my wife and I talked about it for a number of years, and I had that entrepreneur bug or whatever you call it. I had that itch to get out there on my own, and I decided the last company that I left, it was called Magnum. I had a hard time leaving. I liked the people that were working for me. I reported to the vice president. He was the best boss I ever had, and all those things. And he never second guessed me anything. I told my wife, I said, "This is going so well that if I don't make this move pretty soon,
I'll never leave."
I'll never leave."
Yeah.
And so we parted on good terms, and I said, "I have to get out there and see if I can do this myself." And so he was a pretty shrewd guy. After about 6 months, he called me and tried to get me to come back. He figured I nearly starved out, and I just about had.
Yeah.
he
You
right.
get to a certain point in the startup, right? And
Right.
you're just at your wit's end. He
That's
called
right.
right at the right time.
He did, but I thanked him for. He said, "Come on back," but I didn't do it. But the job was hard to leave on account of he was the best person I ever worked for, and I liked my job. I liked the people that I liked. It was a simple chain of command. When I worked for Bayreuth, they were a part of NL Industries, and there were 42 wholly owned subsidiaries. So everything was much more complicated. But the smaller company, I reported to the vice president, and he reported to the president. That's it. There wasn't any complicated chain of command there at all.
Not a lot of hierarchy.
None at all. But when you're one of 42 subsidiaries, like it was when we were under NL Industries, there's complications that you have to clear up with the folks in New York and stuff like that.
So let me ask you a question. You start your company. Obviously, startups are not easy.
They're not easy.
You have this entrepreneurial bug. Okay. What was your favorite thing? You said you owned it for how many years?
About 45.
Okay. What was your favorite thing about owning that business?
Well, you're your own boss, but that comes with built-in handicaps as well.
Yeah, it does.
And this sounds like greedy, and I don't mean to be that way. I don't think I am, but anyhow, whatever I earned was principally mine, you might say. And before when I discovered something that was very profitable, the company made most of the money.
Yeah.
I've gotten promoted. I couldn't complain at Bayreuth. I was lab manager when I left after 12 years. And there was a hierarchy there. First I was a bench chemist, and then I was like a chief chemist with 4 or 5 chemists, and finally the manager over several groups. But I still felt like some of these things, if I did them myself, the benefits would come to me. And it wasn't all that. I just liked the idea of being out on my own. I guess I was an adventurer a little bit in that case.
So if we have somebody that's listening to this podcast, and chances are pretty good that we do, that's thinking about starting their own company, what's your single best piece of advice for them?
My single best piece of advice, I've had people ask me this. I'll back up just a little, and they were probably still in school or just got out. My single best piece of advice is work for somebody that is in that business for a few years before you go out on your own. I've actually heard college students say, as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to open up whatever, and you might succeed. But I worked 15 years for other companies. I could have done it after 5, 6, 7 years, maybe sooner than that. But my single best piece of advice is get some experience in that business that you want to go into, or you might not make it.
It's the best free training you'll ever get, right?
That's right. That's right. You're working for somebody else, and I may be calling the shots, and you may not be getting the paycheck you'd like to get, but nevertheless, you will learn a lot about any business by working in that business. And you won't be responsible for making a profit for the company as you will when you go out on your own. It's in your hands then. You have to succeed or go back in the corporate world.
So here's a question for you. What's the one thing you would have done differently?
I've asked myself that before, and I probably would have gone into business sooner. Like I said, 15 years for other companies is a long time, and I could have done it after, I'll say 5, maybe sooner. I would have probably done it sooner because, and of course, the first 2 or 3 years I was in business by myself, I was one. Especially the first year. I'll tell you how much money I made the first year, $16,000.
Wow.
that wasn't very much. That was my first year's sales. I shredded all of my old income tax and things except just keeping the last 3 years. But that one from 1977, I can't throw it away. I look at that thing.
So here's a question for you. What'd you make the last year that you owned it?
Well, I made a lot. I won't tell you, but it was pretty good.
Quite a bit more than 16,000?
Yes, many times over. Yeah, but I retired comfortably, and to some degree that affected my writing. I've had some things happen. If I were a young writer starting out a career, I might do it differently. Yeah. But I'm comfortably retired. I've told several people I wish I could give away 1 million books, and I'd do it. I had a recent giveaway and gave away 4,500 books, and you go through a complicated process to do that. But now people are reading those books, and I'm getting reviews. But
what made you decide to do that?
Well, just to promote the books.
Okay.
And I'm that is one thing, Mike, that if you look at my books, particularly the last one, By Means of Peace, you look at it on Amazon, or you look up the Kirkus review, is sterling, as good as you'll get, and the reviews are good. So after writing this many books, I am satisfied with my writing, but I am the worst promoter in the world. I'm not good. And everyone, says you need to build a platform, they say, and I had a web page at one time. I never kept up with it. Most people have a web page and they blog and have email lists and do podcasts and this type of thing. And people that do that sell a lot more books than I do. No matter whether the book is better than mine or worse, they sell it. So I am a poor salesman of the book. I love to write, but this last one is about a political election, and so I wrote it to correspond to coincide with this election. I started it at the midterm election 2 years ago.
Okay.
And so I said I looked at the way things were going, and everybody's hostile. The country was so divided into two distinct groups, and I started using these words like groupthink and conspiracy theories. And I said, well, I'll just write a book about that. So my goal was to get it done in plenty of time for this 2024 election, which I did. And so I had a lot of fun when the election started and all this thing, looking at some of the things in my book. I didn't necessarily prophesy anything. In fact, I may have tiptoed around it a little bit. I had a third party candidate come in and win the election. I didn't want to make my Democrat friends or my Republican friends mad, so I just had a third party candidate come in and win the election. And the title of it is By Means of Peace. And that is actually a phrase out of the Bible, the book of Daniel, that says, by means of peace, he shall destroy many. And it talks about a ruler rising to power, and he does a lot of good things. And this is what the president's third party president, he called it the peace party. There have actually been parties like that before, but it became a national party. He's highly charismatic in this, and he promises to do several things. It's over 100 years in the future, but we've got about the same problems we have now. There's problems in the Mideast, problems in Russia and China. I even put another virus in it. I call it, it's like the COVID, I call it the Phoenix 75 virus. And they still have problems at the border. So he promised to solve all of those problems. His name is Reuben Rogoff. That's a new president, third party president. He promises to solve all of those problems. And he pretty much does in his first 3 years. And then, but he's highly charismatic. And by then, in the eyes of most Americans, he can do no wrong. In fact, he wins his second term by acclamation. Nobody even runs against him. And basically, he rises to the position of world dictator. And then all kinds of bad things start happening. And as I said, most Americans still will trust him. But some of my main characters in this book, they are beginning to suspect that the president might be causing those problems himself to control it. The old conspiracy theory, and so the main character, one of the main characters, named Darren, and he is a he's a struggling writer. I figured I'd put a struggling writer in there too, So he's a struggling writer, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and he does join the peace party. The guy, so good, the presidential candidate, that he joins too. But then, after a period of time, when the trouble starts, he is one of the first ones to come to the idea that the president himself has caused those problems just so he can keep his thumb on the people. And it's set in Houston. The main character is Darren, and Rachel is a brother and sister there too. And they are they're twins. John said, called them identical. I call them semi-identical. That is, I think, the scientific term for twins when one is a male and one is a female. The male gets his Y chromosome from his father. He gets nearly all of his other chromosomes from his mother. So they are semi-identical. They couldn't really be identical because one's a boy and one's a girl. But anyhow, the characters, and then they meet up. They live in a condo housing complex in Houston. And all of these housing complexes within the city are under strict control by the government, HUD, and that type of thing. But you get some stipend if you do certain things, and you have to go to meetings and stuff. But anyhow, but then a couple of new people, a family moves in from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And so there's a beautiful girl in the bunch named Marissa. And so Darren falls for her, but she's still waiting for her boyfriend out of Brazil to get his papers right, which he never does. And so finally they have a romance, but she is a strong politico. She ends up, though they have fallen in love, she has a dream or vision or whatever she would call it. And then she goes to Washington, D.C. to work for the government, and they struggle to maintain this long distance relationship. But it's got all kinds of conspiracy theories in it, and I get on the people for groupthink. My main thing, though, Mike, I just want people to enjoy the book. Some people ask me, what's your main purpose? I said, I'm just trying to entertain the people. I said, if I sell a lot of them, I'll find something to do with the money. But I said, if I don't, I said, I'd like to give away 1,000,000 of them if I could, just free and see what people thought about it. So I'm just having fun writing, and I want the people to have fun reading it, but I'm doing a little bit of subliminal message there beneath the surface, and it's think for yourself. Be careful about the groupthink. Well, in fact, a few days ago, Denzel Washington, you probably heard what he said. He said both political parties were guilty of trying to manipulate their members. And Denzel was 100% right. I mean, both parties, of course, want to get elected. And so they will do nearly anything. So anyway, but I just, that's a subliminal message is think for yourself and stand on your own 2 feet there. But the main thing, I'm writing for fun, and I want the people to read it to have fun. If I make some money, fine, I'll take it. But if I don't, I'm not worried about that either.
So that was your 4th book, right?
Yes. One of them, Mike, is about the stock market, and I know that you are interested in the stock market too. So this, I called it Stock Picking Revisited. It's a simple book. But I just by using a couple of simple charts, all I'm showing how to do in that book is to pick stocks that consistently beat the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I mean, if you can do that, you'll be all right. And so it's pretty simple. It's so simple that most financial advisors would probably say it's too simple, but it worked pretty well.
Well, there's brilliance in simplicity.
The brilliance is you can understand it.
Yeah, that's it. So can I ask you a quick question?
Sure, as many as you want.
So what made you decide to start writing books? We have people that are listening to this podcast, guaranteed, that are thinking about writing their first book, me included. And I actually had a meeting this morning with a gentleman that's going to help me with the books that I'm going to write. And I'm wondering what it was that compelled you to start writing books.
Well, I had been actively working, and I had some time on my hands, and I had written many technical reports, research reports when I was in the lab, and papers that I had presented at symposium, and I had even been in the various periodicals related to the industry. So I would say I like to write, and when I completely quit working, I had some time on my hands, and I said, well, I think I will write. And naturally, I chose science fiction as much as that was my field. And for those wanting to write, I have had, in fact, I call it my writing school. I've had about 10 or 12 friends ask me similar questions. And I say, well, you need to jump in there and do it. And they ask me how to get started. And I give a pretty simple answer. I think of it as a 3-act play. I introduce a problem or an event coming up, like a presidential election, or some mystery that absolutely has to be attended to. It's something that prompts action. You can't ignore it. And then and I think the hardest thing, I try hard to put together some good characters. I write down like their autobiography that'll be stuff I never use. I work so hard on the characters, and I worked hard over. I think mine in the last book were better because I'd worked harder, and I got good reviews regarding the characters and their dialogue. And I know everything about them, like I feel like I know them. And then I try to I know where this book will end and roughly what the middles will be. I don't outline every chapter, and I try to turn my characters loose if I can and let them solve the problem, so to speak. That's my approach. Everybody has a little bit of different one, but I think thinking about a 3-act play in the back of your mind, maybe not sticking to it really hard, is a good way to start.
So 2 questions, and then we're going to wrap up if that's okay. So number 1, you mentioned an independent, in your last book, the one you just did, you had an independent presidential candidate.
Yes.
What did you think of Ross Perot's candidacy all those years ago in 1992?
I remember it well, and he had a lot of people, even people in Hollywood. Cher, remember, she's going to vote for him. In our country today, I don't think an independent candidate stands a chance. We're highly divided into two groups, and I can't see it happening. But nearly anything's possible. But that's I put the independent in there so I wouldn't castigate the Republicans or Democrats. In fact, in my book, they have combined into one party, and there's another party that says they're the independent. Incidentally, I got my book laying right here.
There you go.
Look at the medals on it. I entered this in about 10 contests, and I won 2 golds and 3 silvers.
Good for you.
Award contest. So I am, as I said, Mike, I am well satisfied with my writing. I am not satisfied with my promotion because I'm very poor at that.
I got you. I don't think you're poor at anything. Okay. So do you have another book coming?
Yes, it's about AI. I'm calling my working title is City on a Microchip.
Okay.
And I like that. And I have about 20,000 words. I'm trying to do it differently from this because they're going to copy people's brains and make an artificial person, you might say, have his memory and his reactions and things on a computer. But I'm going to have the events where you're going to begin to wonder if it's real people that are getting involved in these things, or if it is indeed the AI people. So that's a little bit harder than doing this. Almost what I've decided is each chapter will be almost like a short story. It'll be the same people, but I want the people not to be sure whether this is real people or if it's just copies of them on a computer.
Gotcha. So when do you think the next book will be coming out?
Well, it'll be close to a year.
Okay.
I have set my goal to write one book every 2 years until I pass 90. So I've got 4. So this would be the 5th one. So I guess I have until I'm 90 years old to do that. So that's nearly 2 more years. No, as long as I can do it, if my memory stays with me, I will keep. I try to write one every 2 years. I have a lot of friends and we go out and eat and we do things together, but I try to write, a little bit every day. So, but I can't see getting it out for about a year.
So after you turn 90, are you doing a book a year? Is that the way it works?
No, I have to allow myself 3 years.
So you're going to go the other way.
Well, I guess it'd be a time to speed up though, if I could. Well, I had one uncle live to be over 100. Many people in my family live to be in the 90s. So, but my sister died at 89 and my brother was only 84. But in general, I have some longevity genes, and it looks like I'm in good health. But I take care of myself, Mike. I walk 2 miles Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I walk outside if the weather permitting, but I have a treadmill. So whatever the weather is, I still do it. So
good for you.
I'm going to keep on doing that.
Good for you. Keep doing it. Don Johnston, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. This has been really fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed every second of it.
It was great.
Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.